Your grandmother did this without ever calling it anything. She would slice the top off a carrot for soup and tuck the green leafy end into a small dish of water on the kitchen windowsill. She would save the bottom inch of a celery stalk and press it into a corner of the herb garden. She would cut up an onion for dinner and stick the root end into the dirt by the back porch. None of this had a name. None of this required instructions. It was simply what you did because you had been raised to never waste anything that could grow more food, and because the woman who taught you to garden had done the same thing for 50 years before you. This is a video about that practice. 11 specific veggies you can buy at the grocery store this week, eat for dinner tonight, and then regrow from the bottoms, the tops, and the parts you would otherwise throw away. Not as a survival exercise, not because the grocery store is going to disappear tomorrow, simply because the same thrift our grandmothers practiced as a matter of course is some of the most rewarding gardening you can do at this stage of life, and the food you grow from your own veggies carries a quiet kind of dignity that the grocery store will never sell you. I planted 11 different veggies in a single raised bed back in early spring. Leafy bases, root tops, a whole sprouting onion, sprouting garlic cloves, a piece of ginger, and a piece of turmeric, the top of a tomato with seeds still inside, and one forgotten potato from the pantry that had already started sending out shoots. I covered them with shade cloth for 2 weeks while they rooted, and then I watched what happened across an entire growing season. Some barely produced anything, a few produced modestly, and 2 of them produced results that genuinely surprised me, including one that turned a single small grocery store item into a cluster of 5 new ones, and another that gave me one of the largest single-plant harvests I have ever pulled out of my garden. I am going to walk you through all 11, exactly how to plant each one, exactly what to expect from each one, and exactly what each one costs you to grow versus what the same food costs at your grocery store. Some of these you will be thrilled with. A few of them you will be honestly disappointed by, and I want you to know that going in so you do not waste your time trying to make them work. And 2 of them will change the way you think about the food that arrives in your kitchen, possibly for the rest of your life. The order matters because the biggest surprises come later. Before I show you the first one, I want to mention something briefly. Many of you have been writing to me about the gardening guide I have been finishing, The Plant Once Garden. It is a complete reference written for women like you, covering 90 perennial plants, 6 full garden plans, the no-labor planting calendar, and the hydrogen peroxide method explained completely. The guide is approximately 150 pages with a hand-drawn heritage cover. I will share more details with you about how to get it as soon as everything is ready. For now, just know that it is coming. Now back to the kitchen. Let's start with lettuce, the base of any head you bring home from the store, romaine or red leaf or green leaf. The bottom inch most of us throw away or compost without thinking about it. Lettuce is the one most people try first when they hear about regrowing kitchen vegetables, because it is so common in every household, and the base is so visibly alive when you cut into a fresh head. And lettuce is also the one that most often disappoints people, because the standard approach of pressing it directly into garden soil rarely produces much. Here is what actually works with lettuce. First, do not skip the water step. Place the lettuce base cut side up in a shallow dish with about a ½ inch of water. Set the dish on a sunny windowsill. Change the water every 2 days. Within 4 or 5 days, you will see small green leaves emerging from the center of the base. Within 10 days, the base will have grown small roots from the bottom. Now and only now, the base is ready to transplant into soil. Plant the rooted base in a small pot of good potting mix or directly into a sunny spot in your garden, with the new leaves above the soil line and the roots below. Water gently and consistently. The base will continue to produce loose, tender leaves for about 3 to 4 weeks before the plant either bolts to flower or simply runs out of energy stored in the original base. You will not get a full head of lettuce from this regrowing. What you will get is 3 to 4 weeks of fresh, tender lettuce leaves for salads, sandwiches, and garnishes, picked 1 leaf at a time as you need them, from a plant that was free. Cost reality. A head of romaine at the grocery store runs $2.50 to $3.50. The regrown base gives you 2 to 4 ounces of fresh leaves over the following month, roughly $50 of grocery store value. not transformative financially, but the leaves taste fresher than anything bagged, and they cost you nothing. Next, celery. The base of any bunch you bring home, the bottom inch or so, the white knob where all the stalks meet. Celery is one of the most rewarding ones to regrow, because the center of the base is essentially a living plant the moment you cut it. The challenge with celery is that the outer portion tends to rot before the center can regenerate. So the trick is keeping the regrowing portion alive long enough for the new center growth to establish. Start the same way as lettuce. Place the celery base cut side up in a shallow dish with about a ½ inch of water. Set the dish on the windowsill. Change the water every 2 days. Within a week, you will see new pale green leaves emerging from the dead center of the base. Within 10 to 14 days, small roots will appear at the bottom. The outer rim of the base will likely look ugly and brown by this point. That is normal. The growth comes from the center, not the outside. Once the new leaves are an inch or two tall and you can see roots forming, transplant the base into a small pot of potting mix. Bury the base just up to where the new leaves emerge. Water consistently. The plant will continue to produce small tender stalks from the center for the next 6 to 8 weeks. You will not get a full new bunch of celery. What you will get is a continuous supply of celery hearts, the tender inner stalks and leaves, perfect for soup stocks, salads, and the celery component of mirepoix in nearly every cooked dish. Cost reality. A bunch of celery runs $2.50 to $4. The regrown base gives you $1 to $1.50 of celery hearts over its growing period, plus the leafy celery greens that most American grocery stores do not even sell separately. Modest financial return. The pleasure of harvesting celery from kitchen waste is the real value. Cabbage next. The base of a head of cabbage, the thick stem and bottom inch left after you have stripped off all the usable leaves. Cabbage is one of the trickier ones because the structure of a cabbage head is different from celery or lettuce. The leaves are tightly wound around a dense central stem rather than emerging from a loose base. Regrowing cabbage requires more patience and produces less reliably than the other leafy bases. Use the same approach as celery. Place the cabbage base cut side up in a shallow dish with water on the windowsill. Change the water every 2 days. Within 10 days to 2 weeks, you should see new tender leaves emerging from the cut surface of the base. Roots are slower to form on cabbage than on celery, so be patient. Wait until the new leaves are at least 2 inches tall and you can see small roots before transplanting. Transplant the rooted base into a small pot or directly into the garden. Bury the base up to where the new leaves emerge. Water consistently and provide some shade for the first week so the transplant does not stress in full sun. The plant will continue producing small tender cabbage leaves for the next 6 to 8 weeks. You will not get a new head of cabbage. The structural information for forming a new head is gone once the original head was cut. What you will get is a continuous supply of small tender cabbage leaves, useful for stir-fries, kimchi additions, and salads where the texture of mature cabbage would be too tough. Cost reality. A head of green cabbage runs $3 to $5. The regrown base gives you $1 to $2 of usable leaves. Modest return, but the leaves are fresher than anything you can buy. Worth trying if you cook with cabbage regularly. Now the leafy green tops of carrots. The portion most cooks cut off and toss into the compost without thinking about it. Carrot tops are one of the most surprising and rewarding ones to regrow because the greens themselves are valuable food, and the regrown plant produces those greens continuously across the growing season. Here is the important thing to know about regrowing carrot tops. You are not going to get new full-size carrots from this. The original taproot that made the carrot is gone the moment you cut the top off. The plant has no way to produce a new long carrot. What it will produce is abundant green leafy growth and, sometimes, a cluster of small, finger-thin sideways carrots emerging from the new root system. The greens are the real harvest. Cut the top of each carrot with about a ½ inch of the orange root still attached. Place the carrot tops cut side down in a shallow dish with about a ¼ inch of water, with the green leaves above the water line. Set the dish on the windowsill. Change the water every 2 days. Within a week, new green growth will emerge from the center of each carrot top. Within 10 days, small white roots will form at the bottom. Transplant into a sunny spot in the garden, burying the carrot stub completely. and leaving the green leaves above the soil. The plant will continue producing carrot greens for the next 6 to 10 weeks. Use the greens like parsley. They have a slightly grassy, slightly bitter flavor that is excellent in chimichurri sauce, blended into pesto with toasted almonds and olive oil, chopped fresh into salads, or simmered in stock. By late summer, many of the carrot tops will begin to flower because carrots are biennial and the plant thinks it is in its second year. Let the flowers go to seed if you want true carrot seeds to plant a proper carrot crop next year. Or pull the plant and use the greens before flowering. Cost reality. A bunch of carrots with the top still attached runs $1 to $2 at farmers markets and select grocery stores. By regrowing the tops, you get the carrots for cooking, plus weeks of fresh carrot greens for sauces and seasonings. Carrot greens, if you could buy them separately, would run $2 to $3 per bunch at any specialty market. You are getting that value for free from something most cooks discard. We are 4 items in, and you may have noticed something. The pattern with leafy bases is consistent. They produce fresh leaves for cooking. They do not produce full new vegetables, and they are worth doing more for the pleasure than the financial return. The next several items follow different patterns entirely. Some produce abundant root vegetables, some multiply themselves, and one of them, coming up, produces results that genuinely surprised me the first time I saw what had happened underground. Now onions. And here is the first genuine surprise of this entire video. Onions regrow in 2 completely different ways depending on which part of the onion you plant, and one of those methods turns a single small onion into a cluster of 4 or 5 new onions in a single growing season. Method 1 is the obvious one. Take the root end of an onion you have just sliced for cooking. Cut off the bottom inch with the small dried roots still attached. Press the root end down into soil with the cut surface facing up. Water it in. Within 2 weeks, you will see new green shoots emerging from the buried base. Within a month, those green shoots will be tall enough to harvest as scallions. By the end of the season, the buried base will have developed into a small onion the size of a golf ball. Not a full storage onion, but a usable small onion you can harvest in fall, dry for 2 weeks, and then replant the following spring to grow into a full-size onion in its second year. You have essentially converted an onion bottom you were about to throw away into a homegrown onion set worth saving for the next gardening season. Method 2 is the surprise. Take a whole small onion from your pantry, preferably one that has started to sprout green shoots from the top, which is the onion you might otherwise throw out as past its prime. Plant the entire whole onion in the garden, root side down, with the top of the onion just at or slightly below the soil line. Water consistently. Here is what happens. The single onion you planted, instead of growing one larger onion, splits underground into a cluster of 4 or 5 separate new onions, each one connected to the others by a shared root system. By the end of the growing season, you can lift the cluster from the ground, gently separate the individual onions, and end up with 4 or 5 small to medium-sized onions where you planted only one. I have done this with multiple onions over multiple seasons, and the multiplication happens reliably almost every time. The size of the resulting onions depends on the growing conditions, but typical results are 4 to 5 new onions, each about the size of a golf ball to a small tennis ball, totaling significantly more onion weight than the single onion you originally planted. You can eat the smaller ones immediately, dry the larger ones for storage, and save some for replanting the following spring to repeat the process indefinitely. Cost reality. A pound of yellow onions at the grocery store currently runs about $1 to $1.50. A single small onion from that pound weighs roughly 3 to 4 ounces. By planting that onion using method 2, you typically harvest 12 to 20 ounces of new onions, plus several reusable onion bases for next season. The math is dramatic. You have essentially turned 25 cents of grocery store onion into $1 or more of new onions, and you can repeat the process every season without ever buying onion sets or onion starts from a nursery again. This is the first item on this list where the financial return becomes genuinely meaningful for a fixed-income household, and it is one of the easiest, most reliable, and most repeatable regrowing methods in all of American kitchen gardening. Next, the leafy tops of beets. Just like with carrots, the leafy tops of beets are the part most cooks throw away without realizing what they are. Discarding. And just like with carrots, the regrowing process produces abundant greens rather than full new root vegetables. Cut the top of each beet with about a ½ inch of the red root still attached. Place the beet tops cut side down in a shallow dish with about a ½ inch of water. Set the dish on the windowsill. Within 5 to 7 days, new red-veined green leaves will emerge from the center of each beet top. Within 10 days, small roots will form at the base. Transplant into a sunny spot in the garden, burying the beet stub completely and leaving the new green leaves above the soil. Beet greens, if you have never eaten them before, are excellent food. The flavor is similar to Swiss chard, slightly earthy, slightly sweet, with red and green coloration that makes them visually striking in any dish. Use them raw in salads when the leaves are young and tender. Sauté them with garlic and olive oil like spinach when they are more mature. Add them to soups and stews. Blend them into smoothies. The greens themselves are worth more than the small beet base you started with, and they will continue producing for 6 to 8 weeks before the plant either bolts or runs out of energy. The interesting bonus with beet tops is that the small root portion left attached to the green leaves does not simply die. It often swells over the growing season, becoming a small, fat, misshapen beet. Not the perfectly round storage beet you would grow from seed, but a usable rounded root with mild, sweet beet flavor, perfect for roasting or grating into salads. So you get greens for cooking, plus a small, unusual beet at the end of the season. Cost reality. A bunch of beets with greens attached runs $2.50 to $4. By regrowing the tops, you extend the value of that single purchase by 6 to 8 weeks of additional greens plus one small bonus beet per regrown top. $3 to $5 of grocery store equivalent value per regrown beet. Meaningful return for a few minutes of planting work. Now, garlic. Specifically, garlic cloves that have already started sprouting in your pantry. We have all had that moment of opening the kitchen drawer and finding a head of garlic with little green shoots emerging from the top of each clove. Most cooks throw those sprouting cloves away because the flavor changes once the sprout develops. But those sprouting cloves are exactly what you want for regrowing. Here is the critically important thing to know about regrowing grocery store garlic, and the detail that determines whether you get a meaningful harvest or a disappointing one. Garlic forms bulbs only after experiencing several weeks of cold dormancy. That is why commercial garlic is planted in October, allowed to overwinter in the cold ground, and then harvested the following July. Garlic planted in spring or summer will produce green shoots but will not form proper bulbs in time for harvest. The plant will simply produce stems and leaves. If you regrow garlic during the spring or summer, treat what you get as garlic greens rather than as a garlic crop. Separate the sprouting cloves, plant them in a sunny spot 2 to 3 inches deep with the pointed end facing up, and water consistently. Within a week, green shoots will emerge from the soil. Within 3 weeks, the shoots will be 6 to 12 inches tall, perfect for harvesting as garlic chives. Cut the green shoots as needed for cooking. They taste like a milder, fresher version of garlic, excellent in eggs, salads, omelets, stir-fries, and as a garnish on roasted meats and soups. If you want actual garlic bulbs for next summer, plant your sprouting grocery store garlic cloves in October. Plant each clove 2 inches deep, pointed end up, in well-drained soil. Mulch heavily with straw or shredded leaves to protect against winter freeze and thaw cycles. The cloves will establish roots over fall, go dormant through winter, and emerge with vigorous green growth the following March. By late July of the following year, you will harvest full mature garlic bulbs from cloves that cost you nothing because they were already sprouting in your pantry. Cost reality. A head of garlic at the grocery store runs $1 to $2. Regrowing sprouting cloves for greens gives you several weeks of fresh garlic chives. Easily $3 to $4 of grocery equivalent value. Regrowing those same cloves for next summer's bulbs by planting in October turns a single sprouting head into 8 to 10 full bulbs at harvest. $20 to $30 of grocery store equivalent value from one sprouting head. The fall planting method is genuinely one of the best dollar per effort returns in all of kitchen gardening. Ginger root from the produce section. The knobby brown rhizome we use for tea, stir-fries, and baking. Ginger is one of the most rewarding things to regrow from the kitchen because the plant grows into a strikingly beautiful tropical foliage plant above ground while continuing to expand its edible rhizome below ground all season long. Start by selecting a piece of ginger that shows visible growing buds, the small light-colored bumps along the surface of the rhizome that look like eyes on a potato. The more visible buds, the better the growing potential. Soak the ginger piece in room temperature water for 24 hours before planting. The soaking step is important because commercial ginger is often treated with growth inhibitors to extend shelf life, and the soak helps wash off some of the chemical treatment. Plant the ginger piece just below the soil surface, about 1 to 2 inches deep, with any visible growing buds facing up. Ginger likes shallow planting. Use a pot at least 8 to 10 inches deep, with rich, well-draining soil, or plant directly in the garden if you live in a warm climate. Water consistently, but never soak. Ginger likes moist soil, but rots in soggy conditions. Within 3 to 4 weeks, you will see green shoots emerging from the soil. The shoots grow into tall, narrow leaves on slender stems, eventually reaching 1 to 2 feet tall depending on growing conditions. Ginger is a tropical perennial that is not winter hardy in most of the United States. If you live in zones 9 or warmer, ginger can stay in the ground year-round, and the rhizome will continue expanding for multiple seasons. If you live in zone 8 or colder, dig up the ginger plant in early fall before the first frost. Transplant it into a pot and bring it indoors for the winter. Place the pot near a sunny window and water sparingly. The plant will go semi-dormant indoors, and you can either harvest the rhizome at any point during winter or transplant it back outside the following spring. Cost reality. A piece of fresh ginger at the grocery store runs $2 to $4. A single regrown plant produces 6 to 10 ounces of new ginger by season's end, easily $5 to $10 of grocery store equivalent value. The bonus is that fresh garden-grown ginger has noticeably stronger flavor than a supermarket ginger that has traveled long distances. Once you have tasted ginger fresh from your own pot, the grocery store version starts to taste flat. Turmeric root, the bright orange-yellow rhizome related to ginger that has become more widely available in American grocery stores over the last decade. Turmeric regrows using essentially the same method as ginger, with one significant difference. Turmeric is slower to sprout, slower to grow, and requires more patience than ginger. Select a piece of turmeric with visible growing buds along the surface. Soak in room temperature water for 24 hours. Plant just below the soil surface in rich, well-draining potting mix, in a pot at least 8 inches deep. Water consistently, and then wait. Turmeric can take 6 to 8 weeks to show visible growth above the soil, compared to ginger's 3 to 4 weeks. Many home gardeners give up on turmeric thinking the rhizome failed when it is simply taking its time. Once the green shoots emerge, the plant grows similarly to ginger but slightly taller and broader. Turmeric foliage is more dramatic and more lush than ginger foliage. The flowering when it happens is striking. Pale pink and white spike-shaped blooms that look almost orchid-like. Most home gardeners in the United States never see turmeric flower because the growing season is not long enough, but the foliage alone makes the plant worth growing as an ornamental in addition to a food crop. The same overwintering rules apply as with ginger. Bring potted turmeric indoors before the first frost. Reduce watering during winter dormancy. Either harvest the rhizome at any point during winter, or transplant outside again the following spring. The rhizome continues expanding over multiple growing seasons, so plants 2 or 3 years old produce significantly more turmeric than first-year plants. Cost reality. A piece of fresh turmeric runs $3 to $5. A single regrown plant produces 4 to 8 ounces of new rhizome by season's end, roughly $6 to $12 of grocery store equivalent value. Worth doing for the food. Worth doing for the strikingly beautiful tropical foliage. Worth doing simply for the surprise of seeing this exotic plant grow in your American garden. We are 9 items in, and the next 2 are where this entire experiment becomes genuinely remarkable. One of them turns a forgotten tomato on your kitchen counter into a small garden of tomato plants without you ever buying a single tomato seed. And the other one, the very last on this list, is the one I mentioned at the beginning, that produces a harvest large enough to surprise even gardeners who have been doing this for 40 years. the top of a tomato with the seeds inside. Specifically, the top inch sliced off a ripe tomato, the part that contains both the firmer tomato flesh near the stem end and several dozen small viable seeds embedded in the gel surrounding the seed cavities. This one is the closest thing to a horticultural surprise in this entire video, because what regrows is not really the original tomato plant. What regrows is a small cluster of new tomato seedlings emerging from the seeds that were already inside the tomato when you brought it home from the store. Slice the top inch off a ripe tomato, ideally one that is fully ripe and slightly soft, which means the seeds inside have matured fully. Make sure your slice includes a portion of the green stem end and some of the surrounding tomato flesh containing seeds. Press the slice cut side down into a sunny spot in your garden, with the green stem portion just at the soil surface. Cover lightly with about a 1/4 inch of soil. Water consistently. Within 10 to 14 days, small tomato seedlings will emerge from the spot where you planted the slice. The original tomato flesh will have decomposed into the soil, but the seeds inside survived and germinated. You will typically see 3 to 7 seedlings emerge from a single tomato slice. Wait until each seedling has at least 4 true leaves, then thin to the strongest 2 plants. The 2 remaining seedlings will grow into full tomato plants over the rest of the season. Here is the important, honest detail about regrown tomato plants. Most grocery store tomatoes are hybrids, meaning the parent plants were carefully selected and crossed to produce the specific characteristics of the tomato variety you bought. When you grow seeds from a hybrid tomato, the offspring are unpredictable. They might taste like the original. They might taste milder, more sour, less sweet, or completely different. They are still real tomatoes, still edible, still useful, but they will not necessarily reproduce the exact flavor profile of the tomato you started with. This is the trade-off of regrowing from hybrid seed. Heirloom tomatoes, if you can find them at a farmer's market, reproduce more reliably from their seeds. Cost reality. A single ripe tomato runs $1 to $2. The 2 regrown plants from a single tomato slice will produce somewhere between 15 and 30 tomatoes each across the growing season. Total, grocery equivalent value of $50 to $100 per slice. Remarkable financial return, even though the flavor may not match the original. The other benefit is that this method gives you tomato plants late in the season when garden centers have stopped selling seedlings. Last one. The forgotten potato. The single potato from your pantry that has been sitting in the dark long enough to start sending out white or pale green shoots from its eyes. The potato every cook knows is past its prime for eating, but cannot quite bring themselves to throw away. That potato is about to give you one of the most surprising harvests in all of American kitchen gardening. And the financial math is dramatic enough that this one alone is worth more than every other item in this video combined. Plant the entire sprouting potato as is. No cutting needed for a small potato, or cut a larger potato into chunks with at least 1 growing eye per chunk, and let the cut surfaces dry for 2 days before planting. Plant about 4 inches deep in loose, well-drained soil, with the shoots facing up. Cover with soil. Water consistently. Within 10 to 14 days, green leafy potato shoots will emerge from the soil. Here is the technique that makes the difference between a modest potato harvest and a remarkable 1. As the potato plant grows, mound additional soil up around the base of the stems, leaving only the top set of leaves exposed. This is called hilling, and it forces the plant to produce additional tubers along the buried portion of the stems. Repeat the hilling 3 or 4 times across the growing season as the plant gains height. By midsummer, you will have a hilled mound about a foot tall, covered with healthy green potato foliage and dramatic small white or pink potato flowers. The plant grows above ground for about 3 to 4 months. Then in late summer or early fall, the foliage yellows, withers, and dies back. This is the signal that the underground tubers have finished growing. Wait 2 more weeks after the foliage dies completely, then carefully dig the entire hill. And here is the surprise. From the single sprouting potato you planted, you will pull out anywhere from 15 to 30 new potatoes ranging in size from small marbles to the size of your fist. The total harvest weight from one plant is commonly 4 to 7 pounds of fresh potatoes. The largest plants in good conditions produce 8 to 10 pounds. Cost reality. A single small potato from the grocery store currently costs about 50 to 75 cents. The harvest from that single potato runs 4 to 7 pounds of new potatoes, roughly $8 to $20 of grocery store equivalent value. The financial return is 20 to 30 times the original cost from a single forgotten potato that would otherwise have gone in the compost. There is no other vegetable in your kitchen that delivers this kind of dramatic return from a single piece of waste. None. One important note. If you are planning to do this seriously, rather than as an experiment, look for organic potatoes specifically. Commercial conventional potatoes are often treated with sprout inhibitors during storage that prevent or weaken regrowth. Organic potatoes are not treated this way, and they sprout reliably when given the conditions to do so. The slight price premium for organic potatoes pays itself back many times over the first time you harvest a hill from a single sprouted spud. 11 veggies, 1 growing season. Most of the regrown plants delivered modest returns, fresh greens, small extra harvests, the pleasure of seeing something grow from waste. A few of them delivered genuinely meaningful financial returns, especially the onions, the garlic planted in fall, the tomatoes, and the potatoes. And the total grocery store equivalent value of what you can produce from a single season of regrowing your veggies runs somewhere between $50 and $150 for a household that does this systematically across an entire year. Not a fortune, but not nothing. And every dollar of it is value reclaimed from food that would otherwise have gone into the compost or the trash. Here is what I want you to take away from this video more than anything else. The practice of regrowing your veggies is not really about the money. The money is the pleasant bonus. The real value is the connection to a way of relating to food that our grandmothers practiced without ever thinking about it as a practice. The connection to the dignified resourcefulness that came naturally to American women who lived through the Depression, who raised children on what their gardens produced, who never threw out anything that could grow more food. That heritage of careful thrift is something modern American grocery culture has worked hard to erase from us. And small, simple practices like the ones in this video quietly bring it back, 1 onion bottom and 1 sprouting potato at a time. If you have enjoyed this video and want the complete reference for the kind of long-term, low-labor perennial gardening I teach on this channel, keep an eye out for the Plant Once Garden coming soon. The guide covers 90 perennial plants, 6 full garden plans, the no-labor planting calendar, the hydrogen peroxide method, the shrubs that bring cardinals to your kitchen window, and the closing chapter on what your garden becomes over 20 years of careful, thoughtful planting. I will let you know in a future video the moment it is ready. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 11 you are going to try regrowing this season, because I read every comment and your answers shape what I cover next. The garden is yours. Go grow something from what you would have thrown away.